As the chalice is lit, let us come together into this sacred space we have created. Let the cares of the day fall away and know that there is a place for quiet reflection, for a pause in our lives, for breathing into our true selves. Let what is said and felt here add richness to the dimensions of our lives and spiritual practices. We are strong together in community. Let the warmth of this chalice connect us.
It seems like images of the meditating Buddha are everywhere, from local temples to lawn ornaments. Meditation is an important part of Buddhist practice, but it's not the only component. Buddhism emphasizes 3 types of trainings: wisdom, ethics, and meditation. Today, members of the Awakening Heart Sangha will explore the ethical aspect of Buddhism and how it has helped us to become more mindful in our speech and listening. Good morning. I'm Karen Massetti Miller, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'm speaking to you today from land that is the traditional territory of the indigenous Iowa people. Whenever you hear a land acknowledgement, please consider donating $1 or more to support Indigenous organizations or Indigenous-led grassroots change movements and campaigns. Encourage others to do the same. If you are joining us by Zoom, please keep your microphones muted during the entire service. After the service, everyone here in person is welcome to join us in the gathering area for refreshments, and those of you online are invited to unmute your mics and join a breakout room.
Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. My name is Birch Spick. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs, and it's my pleasure to be your celebrant this morning. Thank you for joining us today, whether you're here for the hour, for a lifetime, or somewhere in between. We're so glad that you are joining us in this community that grows ethically and spiritually, serves justly, and loves radically. Whoever you are, we hope here that you find thoughts which challenge you, welcome which invites you into community, and people to accompany you on your life's journey. Our opening hymn this morning is song 1009 in your teal hymnal, When I Breathe In. The words will be on your screen, and if you are joining us by Zoom, please keep your mics muted and sing along at home. For our children chapel this morning, we have a video of a children's story, Puppy Mind, by Andrew Jordan Nance. In Buddhist tradition, generosity, or dana, is considered one of the 10 paramitas, or 10 perfections, that practitioners strive to emulate. It is considered so important that it is listed first among the perfections. With this in mind, let us give as we are able, thankful for all that we have and all that we can share. This morning's offering will be given and received in person or through the link you will find in your Zoom chat. Half of this morning's plate goes to the internal social justice work of our congregation, and half of it is split with our community partners, Knock and Drop and Just Voices.
The late Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh says, sitting meditation is very healing. It's like returning home to give ourselves full attention and care. As we begin our meditation time, you may want to adjust your posture. Sit with your back straight, your feet flat on the floor, and rest your hands comfortably in your lap. Carefully follow your breath as it goes in and out of your body. Let your mind become more spacious and more relaxed with each in and out breath. Let your body breathe you. You may want to close your eyes gently if you haven't. If your mind strays from the breath, gently return to it. This coming home to our conscious breath in the present moment is what this practice is all about. As thoughts arise, observe them with an accepting and loving eye. Just allow any thoughts to float on your breath. Feel free to adjust your sitting posture should discomfort arise. Give the same mindful attention to your body as you do to your breath. Enjoy your breathing.
In this community, we take time each morning that we gather to care for and minister to one another. In this community, we journey together through all of our lives, joys and sorrows. Laura Berardi writes that her father, James Jordan, has recently entered hospice at Bishop Drum Health Center. This is a hard journey to be on. Laura and Gianfranco have decided to accept some help, but as of now, there are no specific needs. There may be a sign-up genius in the future, so you can be on the lookout for that. For now, please keep Laura, Franco, and their children Dominic and Dante in your hearts. Let us share now, aloud or silently, in this space or in the chat on Zoom, anyone we are holding this morning in joy or in sorrow. Jules and Erica. Let us also be mindful of the joys and sorrows that abound in our world, the ones near and far from us, the ones we have seen, the ones that we have yet to see, have yet to bear witness to. May we hold all of these in our minds and our hearts. In the tradition of this community, we light 3 candles, one for the names we have spoken, one for those that we hold in our hearts, and one for the ones that are too deep and precious for us to speak aloud.
Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul.
Lay practitioners in the Plum Village tradition recite the 5 mindfulness trainings once each month. Ordained practitioners recite 14 mindfulness trainings. The training on loving speech and deep listening from the 5 mindfulness trainings describes how we can speak and listen with compassion and avoid reacting out of fear or anger. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful speech and the inability to listen to others, I am committed to cultivating loving speech and compassionate listening in order to relieve suffering and to promote reconciliation and peace in myself and among other people, ethnic and religious groups, and nations. Knowing that words can create happiness or suffering, I am committed to speaking truthfully, using words that inspire confidence, joy, and hope. When anger is manifesting in me, I am determined not to speak. I will practice mindful breathing and walking in order to recognize and to look deeply into my anger. I know that the roots of anger can be found in my wrong perceptions and lack of understanding of the suffering in myself and in the other person. I will speak and listen in a way that can help myself and the other person to transform suffering and see the way out of difficult situations. I am determined not to spread news that I do not know to be certain, and not to utter words that can cause division or discord. I will practice right diligence to nourish my capacity for understanding, love, joy, and inclusiveness, and gradually transform anger, violence, and fear that lie deep in my consciousness. The training on truthful and loving speech from the 14 mindfulness trainings builds on loving speech and deep listening, with special advice for Sanghas, which are Buddhist practice communities. We will protect the happiness and harmony of our Sangha by refraining from speaking about the faults of other persons in their absence, and always ask ourselves whether our perceptions are correct. We will speak only with the intention to understand and help transform the situation. We will not spread rumors, nor criticize or condemn things of which we are not sure. We will do our best to speak out about situations of injustice, even when doing so may make difficulties for us or threaten our safety.
Our special music this morning is by Dana Sloter, who is an adjunct professor at Drake and Simpson. And Dana, will you remind me the song that you're playing this morning?
Rhapsody for Clarinet by Wilson Osborne.
Thank you for being here today.
aware of the suffering caused by unmindful speech and the inability to listen to others. I am committed to cultivating loving speech and compassionate listening. When anger is manifesting in me, I am determined not to speak. We all know that unmindful speech or unmindful social media posts can cause suffering, ranging from hurt feelings to the end of a relationship, or even promote physical violence. And we also know that we truly appreciate it when someone takes the time to listen to us, even if they don't end up agreeing with us. So why don't we do these things more often? As I pondered this question, I thought about the times in my life when I've said something thoughtless or hurtful to see if I could find a common thread. Unfortunately, for those who have known me over the years, I had a lot of examples to choose from, not all of which are appropriate for retelling. However, there was one story that stood out, one that my husband and I still talk about. We call it the noodle incident. Many years ago, back in the 20th century, before smartphones, my husband Bill and I were newly married and struggling to pay our student loans. We didn't have a big food budget, so we were eating a lot of pasta. Spaghetti, fettuccine, penne, and linguine were all being boiled up in our tiny kitchen. Coming from an Italian heritage, I had tremendous confidence in my pasta preparation ability, and I knew in my very soul that al dente style was the way to go. However, my husband seemed to have a different opinion of pasta perfection, preferring his slightly more cooked, and I was becoming increasingly frustrated by his lack of sophistication. One night, as I was stirring up some tricolor rotini noodles, I vowed that we would settle this issue once and for all. I cooked the rotini to what I deemed the point of perfection, poured them into a sieve and announced, "They're done." Bill tasted one. I don't think they're done, he said. I tasted one. "No, you're wrong," I said. "They're totally done." He tried another one. "No," he said politely, "they're still chewy." "They're not chewy," I responded, feeling my blood pressure climb just a little. "They're al dente." "Maybe you can just put them back on the stove," he said, trying to be helpful. In retrospect, this was actually a reasonable solution, but I'd already thrown the water out, my heart rate was rising, and I was not in the mood to compromise. So offering some choice comments, best not repeated here, I held the sieve of rotini up like a tennis racket and heaved the whole mess of now cold noodles at the wall. My thought was that at least a few of them would stick to the wall, proving that they were in fact done. But that didn't happen. Instead, they slid to the floor, where they immediately became cat toys. And Bill had the chance to show off his culinary skills by warming up a frozen pizza. It's his signature dish. Moving from the ridiculous to the sublime, what can this silly story of pasta destruction tell us about mindful speech and deep listening? Well, I can think of at least two insights. First, it's easy to think that we know everything there is to know about a topic, whether it's world politics or the consistency of noodles. But if we go into a situation with that attitude, we're not going to be very good listeners. So often in our culture, we approach conversations as if they're a debate, and there can be only one winner. What if instead of seeing a conversation as a debate, we saw it as an exchange of ideas? These ideas can be very different, And this just because we take the time to listen to someone, it doesn't mean we're agreeing with them. Listening deeply means that we're taking the time to understand why the other person thinks the way they do. It's possible that if we show them this respect, they'll return the favor and listen to our explanation of why we think the way we do. And we may even be able to reach a compromise. But even if that doesn't happen, we will at least have learned something from listening to them. And perhaps what we learn can help us grow. Second, there's a moment between stimulus and response when we can make a choice not to belittle a coworker for a mistake, a choice not to berate a child for misbehaving, or a choice not to throw noodles. If you're in a conversation and you feel your body moving into flight or fight response, there's no shame in pausing for a moment, taking a breath or two or three, and dialing down the intensity a little. And if you're in a conversation where another person is losing control, there's no shame in requesting that they dial down the intensity. No one should have to put up with being insulted or yelled at. So how would I respond today if faced with another debate about noodles? First, I would recognize that I am not the ultimate noodle authority. Just as there are many cultures in the world, there are many ways of preparing noodles. I would also try to learn more about the other person's noodle preferences. Why do they prefer noodles cooked in this way? Would they be open to trying a compromise noodle? Not quite al dente, but not soggy either. Most of all, I would remember to breathe. If all those years ago, I had taken 1 or 2 breaths before throwing those noodles, I might have realized that I was holding the perfect compromise in the palm of my hand. All I had to do was remove half of the noodles in their al dente perfection and place the other half in a pot of water for additional cooking. Both of us would have gotten what we wanted, and there would have been no mess on the floor to clean up. Thank you for listening to my story.
Second reading. The second reading is in a handout attached to your order of service. It's on true community and communication. It's from the 14th Mindfulness Training and provides more detail on how members of the community can work together and resolve conflicts. Aware that lack of communication always brings separation and suffering, we are committed to training ourselves in the practice of compassionate listening and loving speech. Knowing the true communication is rooted in inclusiveness and in the concrete practice of the harmony of views, thinking, and speech, we will practice to share our understanding and experiences with members in our community in order to arrive at collective insight. We are determined to listen deeply without judging or reacting, and refrain from uttering words that can create discord or cause the community to break. Whenever difficulties arise, we will remain in our Sangha and practice looking deeply into ourselves and others to recognize all the causes and conditions, including our own habit energies that have brought about difficulties. We will take responsibility for all the ways we may have contributed to the conflict and keep communication open. We will not behave as a victim, but be active in finding ways to reconcile and resolve all conflicts, however small.
I'm Deborah Rogers, and I'm equally comfortable with the pronouns she, her, hers, and they, them, theirs. Sharing my experience of the mindfulness trainings, I would start by saying that they've been a reliable guide for me throughout the years of my Buddhist practice. When I first heard them, especially the 14 mindfulness trainings, I felt an immediate sense of recognition. They define the kind of life I already knew I wanted to live, and they explain in detail how to do it. The trainings came as a great relief, actually. For me, it's all about practicing behaviors that lead to less suffering and create greater happiness for me and those around me. Reciting both the 5 mindfulness trainings and the 14 mindfulness trainings once a month and reading them on my own in between, they became very familiar to me in a natural, organic way. I didn't try to practice them. Phrases would just pop into my mind during my everyday interactions with other people. And they offered the possibility of doing something different than what I had habitually done before. I grew up in a family with an alcoholic father who became violent when he drank, and a mother who was quick to anger and was a harsh disciplinarian. And the result of that is I had a very chaotic emotional life. And as a teenager and young adult, my behavior was often impulsive and reactive and caused me a lot of problems. I worked very hard in therapy and in Al-Anon to overcome the effects of the adverse events of my childhood, but it was Buddhist wisdom, ethics, and meditation practices that really changed things for me at a much deeper level. In the beginning, I experienced Buddhist ethical practices as cleaning up my outer behavior so that I wouldn't create messes. Thank you, Karen, in my relationships that were difficult to make amends for and try to heal. Gradually, as my emotions and behavior stabilized and calmed, I began to use the mindfulness trainings more and more as a reliable resource to guide me in difficult situations, whether with family members, friends, coworkers, or in church relationships. One time, several years ago, I was having a lot of trouble with a coworker at the hospital where we both worked. I and others perceived her to be something of a bully. She targeted me directly a couple of times, and I came to experience her as someone who was not trustworthy and was not safe psychologically. I really suffered in this relationship. One day I was talking about her on the phone to a good friend who lived in another state and didn't know her. My friend Larry had heard about my struggles with this coworker on previous calls. This time, Larry interrupted me as I talked and asked, "Deb, what can you do in this situation to relieve suffering?" Oh my gosh, his question stopped me dead in my tracks. I realized in an instant how much I had been embracing my role as a victim, and how my energy and behavior were not only keeping the conflict going, but were likely escalating it. Since then, my go-to questions for myself in any situation where I'm having difficulty with another person are, what can I do in this situation to relieve suffering? And how can I act to contribute to a positive outcome rather than adding energy that perpetuates suffering or causes things to escalate? It completely changes the energy of the situation for me, opens my eyes to other possibilities, and brings me back in touch with my respect and caring for the other person and for myself. The mindfulness trainings outline specific behaviors that are immensely helpful and show me the way, but the overlying principle is always, how can I reduce suffering? The result over time of this shift in perspective has been that things go a lot more smoothly in my life, even in times of challenge, and I feel happier and more stable. We, members of Awakening Heart Sangha, chose the mindfulness trainings on truthful, loving speech and deep listening, and on true community and communication to share with you today, because these two trainings have been coming up a lot for us in our Dharma discussions, in our Monday night Sangha meetings. In situations in our daily lives, a lot of us have been sharing, and also during the times of recent difficulties in our congregation. Several people have said the trainings are helping them take good care of their strong emotions and are guiding them to healthy behavior. Speaking for myself, over the past 2 weeks, as I began to think about what I would say today, I found myself reviewing the trainings and getting honest with myself about where I am practicing them well and where I am behaving less skillfully. Not speaking about the faults of other persons in their absence, and speaking truthfully, using words that inspire confidence, joy, and hope, are behaviors that I practice very imperfectly. They're hard for me, but I recognize when others do them well, and I learn from their examples. The mindfulness training on true community and communication that we just heard is my close companion these days, especially the last 3 sentences. Whenever difficulties arise, we will remain in our Sangha and practice looking deeply into ourselves and others to recognize all the causes and conditions, including our own habit energies, that have brought about the difficulties. We will take responsibility for all the ways we may have contributed to the conflict and keep communication open. We'll not behave as a victim, but be active in finding ways to reconcile and resolve all conflicts, however small. I'm committed to practicing these behaviors to the best of my ability. And I especially want to be someone who is psychologically safe for others. And I hope I'm moving in the direction of being more skillful. Thank you.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. The Dharma is deep and lovely. We now have a chance to see, study, and to practice it. We vow to realize its true meaning.
Good morning. My name is Amanda DeBose. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm speaking to you this morning from the unceded land of the Onondaga, the fire keepers of the Haudenosaunee. Another name for it is Syracuse, New York. learning to listen. I know the roots of anger. I know the roots of fear. I know the roots of pain. I know the roots of misunderstanding can be found in my wrong perceptions and lack of understanding of the suffering in myself and in the other person. I'm decent at seeing and feeling the suffering of others. I've spent most of my waking hours the last 10 years teaching my little people to listen to each other, to identify how they are feeling. I've learned new techniques. I see you seem to be upset. Are you frustrated? Do you know why you're frustrated? Would you like to tell me why you're frustrated? Not yet? Okay. Do you want me to stay or go? Stay? Okay. I'll sit here with you until you're ready. I've learned to hold space for others to express their feelings, to ask if others want problem solving or to vent, to use I statements, to repeat what I've heard someone say before I respond, just to make sure I heard them properly. But in all that listening and focusing and holding space, I forgot about an important part of the equation. The teaching says, in my wrong perceptions of suffering in myself and in the other person, of suffering in myself, I had spent so much time focusing on my wrong perceptions of others' suffering and helping little people perceive their suffering that I had compressed and disregarded my own suffering, my hurt feelings, my overwhelm, my physical pain, my own likes and hobbies and passions. Like Julia Roberts in Runaway Bride, I didn't know how I liked my eggs. I had forgotten to listen to myself. I had to acknowledge my difficult feelings. I had to reclaim my passions, my expertise, my time, my boundaries, my voice. When my father died suddenly this past March, I had to sit with all my feelings. My disappointment that he had cut me out of his life, the deep hurt of discovering that I had been intentionally excluded from finding out he was sick. Family members were told not to tell me. Why not? No one asked. I was specifically told not to try to visit his last week. It would just upset him. I was told to be grateful that I was allowed a 30-second phone call to say goodbye. I wasn't grateful. I was hurt. And being told to swallow my feelings just threw insult on injury. A week later, a decently varied Google search told me the thing no one else could. He had gone down the QAnon rabbit hole, and I was too liberal, too queer, too different to be worthy of humanity in his eyes. Like the characters in Encanto, I would never be good enough for him. I would never be strong enough for him. I would never be perfect enough for him because of my lifestyle. So what did I do with this revelation? I stopped accepting that I just had to try harder, that I should have reached out to him more. As my mom said, it wasn't because he didn't know what to do with me, as she had always insisted. It was because he had rejected who I was at my core. To win his love, I would have had to reject everything about myself and my beliefs that I considered decent and good. I saw my own misperceptions about my suffering. It wasn't my fault that he had never wanted to spend time with me, that he hadn't visited me, that I wasn't invited to his wedding, that he never bothered to meet my youngest child, that he stopped loving me. And it never had. I decided I would rather love myself than have been loved by someone who couldn't love me as I am. I found the root of the anger I held for my father, and I pulled it from the flower bed of my consciousness. Now that sucker is tenacious, like dandelions. The root is deep, and it keeps popping up when I least expect it. But just like the dandelions in my yard, I'm slowly learning to look at it from another perspective. Maybe it's not a weed, but a hardy flower. Those sunshiny puffs can remind me to love myself, to honor who I am, and remind me that I am not responsible for the perceptions of others, only for telling my own truths as I see them. Now I try to ask myself the questions I ask my young children. I see you're frustrated. Do you want to vent or problem solve? Do you want me to stay with you? Okay. I'll sit with you until you're ready. I try to put more effort into telling rather than bottling, even if it's only on paper, into listening to myself, into setting boundaries, into breathing deeply and sitting with my emotions, looking into their roots so that I can find the place where, like blowing on a dandelion puff, it gradually transforms anger, violence, and fear that lie deep in my consciousness. By practicing this right diligence, I'm nourishing my capacity for understanding, love, joy, and inclusiveness. Thank you.
Our chalice is extinguished, but the warmth of compassion and the light of insight and wisdom carry on with us. These are not extinguished. May we carry them with us into the wider world. Our closing song this morning is 1031, Filled with Loving Kindness.
May you be filled with loving kindness and feel loved. May you be safe from inner and outer dangers. May you be well in body, heart, and mind. May you live your life with ease and be truly happy. Go now in peace.
Reciting the sutras, practicing the way of awareness, gives rise to benefits without limit. We vow to offer tribute to parents, teachers, friends, numerous beings who give guidance and support along the path.